Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking to you today about the moon. This is our next topic in astronomy. As we move outwards from the Earth and gravity and seasons, we're now talking about the moon. So the moon is the only natural satellite of Earth. When we mean natural satellite, it means that it is not man-made. A satellite is a celestial body that orbits a planet. The moon is relatively large compared to the size of Earth. Our moon has no atmosphere, and temperatures are extremely hot during the day and cold at night. The moon revolves around the Earth similar to the way the Earth revolves around the sun. It takes the moon 27.3 days to orbit the Earth. That is one revolution. It takes the moon 27.3 days to rotate once on its axis. Because the moon rotates and revolves at the same speed, we only see one side of the moon from Earth. So we're only ever seeing the same side of the moon. And then gravity on the moon is 1/6 the gravity on Earth. So the big takeaway from this slide is I want you to remember how much the revolution and the rotation of the moon is. It is the same number. It's 27.3 days. Or you can say about a month when we're talking sometimes on tests. It's going to be between 27 and 30 days is our moon's revolution. It takes about a month. The moon appears to change shape based on how much of the moon we see. Okay, so when you look up in the sky, sometimes you notice the different shapes of the moon. The moon is always going to be a sphere, though, so it does not really change shape. The phases change according to how much light from the sun we see from Earth. Okay, so if you look at the diagram, okay, a new moon is when there appears to be no moon in the sky. The moon doesn't just disappear, though. It's still there. It's still rotating and revolving around the Earth. We just cannot see it with the reflection of the sun. After a new moon, okay, comes a waxing crescent. The waxing crescent is just like a bitten cookie. That's what they call it. So you start to see the little sliver of the moon. After a waxing crescent comes a first quarter. You can see that the moon is directly cut in half, and that is what we are seeing. It's like a half moon. When the moon is 3/4 illuminated, we call it a waxing gibbous. A gibbous moon just means that it's 3/4 of the way illuminated. After a waxing gibbous becomes a full moon. We see a full moon once a month, sometimes twice a month. We see it for several days. So usually a full moon lasts for 2 to 3 days. After a full moon, the dark part of the moon changes sides. So you can see waxing crescent on the left side of the moon is where you have the shadow. After a full moon, a waning gibbous, okay, the shadow is now on the right side of the moon. So a waning gibbous, a gibbous moon again, is a 3/4 moon. Last quarter, you can see how it is flipped in half. Okay, the shadow has changed sides. And then a waning crescent. A crescent is just that tiny little sliver of light. So those are your 8 moon phases. The phases of the moons depend on the relative position of the Earth, moon, and sun. A new moon is when the moon is between the Earth and the sun, and the sunlit side of the moon faces away from the Earth, and the moon appears to be dark on Earth. After a new moon, the phases begin to wax. Waxing, which is when more of the illuminated half of the moon is seen each night. So remember, waxing, the shadow is on the left side until you get to a full moon. A full moon is when all the moon's surface facing the Earth reflects light. So we see this side of the moon at all times, okay, because of its revolution and rotation being the same speed. We don't ever see the back side of the moon. So we can actually map out this side of the moon pretty well, being that this is the only side that we see. After the full moon, the phases begin to wane. Waning is when you see less of the illuminated side each night. So after the full moon, the darkness, the shadow, switches sides to the other side. Then the gibbous moon is where it's 3/4 illuminated, a last quarter, and a waning crescent. So again, these are your moon phases: full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, waning crescent, new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous. And this is how it would appear from Earth. Okay, so if you see the sun is on this side, our moon revolves and rotates around the Earth. This is different positions, and the Earth is here. So remember, we see a full moon when it is dark out, and the moon is on this side of the Earth. We see a new moon, or we don't see a new moon because the illuminated side is facing the sun, and we just see darkness. And then as the phases change, that's the change based on their position. All right, this is your notes for the phases of the moon. So we talked about the different 8 phases that we have. We talked about why it doesn't change shape, and the revolution and the rotation. It's very important that you remember that. Also, that the gravity on the moon is 1/6 the gravity of Earth. And we talked about that already when we talked about Earth. All right, now go complete your assignment for today. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.